You can find peace between all of this rage and tranquility. Balance.
Hello survivors and welcome to Survivor's Guilt, the only channel that determines your odds of surviving 2021's indie exploitation flick, Fountaine and the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die. So stay tuned till the end for your survival stats. I'm your sharp-dressed slasher turned Vengeful Nun, GhostFake. Now I hope you like church-wide corruption, cause this movie is getting spoiled. Fountaine and the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die was written by James Dean and Louis Otero, and directed by James Dean, who requested that I cover this movie, which is a request I will never pass up. Covering indie movies is a difficult thing because on one hand you are hopefully introducing the movie to a much wider audience, but at the same time you don't want to totally spoil the movie for its potential audience, or have them finish your video thinking that it's the equivalent of having watched the movie. Basically it comes down to balancing between reaching more people and not robbing them of their audience. And like with any movie I cover, I suggest that you go watch this one and form your own opinion, because what James and his crew did here with the budget that they had is pretty excellent. Currently this movie is streaming for free on Tubi, but as I always suggest, go to his website and order a physical copy, because he only makes pennies when you stream it on Tubi. But before you do that, go check out the short prologue to this movie called Maniac Nun on a Mission to Kill Leo Fountaine on James's YouTube channel, Monster Kid Productions. And also consider going to his Indie-gogo campaign, xxxmas.com. It will be a fun little horror movie based around an adult movie set and a killer Santa. So if you're willing and able, go help make that one a reality. Every little bit helps. Fountaine and the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die, starring Mallory Stern, Ron Clower, Jaclyn Tripp, and Brian Davis. Fountaine and the Vengeful Nun That Wouldn't Die is about Fountaine and the Vengeful Nun Who Wouldn't Die. We open up to Father Fountaine accosting a gaggle of nuns for poor mass attendance, as well as the lack of tithing.
Attendance has been down. More importantly, so is tithing.
And they propose a plan to get more people into church.
Why haven't you already taken those steps, sister? Must I do everything?
But Father Fountaine is pissed that they haven't acted on it yet and dismisses them. But he calls back Sister Alice before she leaves and calls her to repentance for flirting with the delivery boy.
I absolve you of your sins. I wash away your impurities.
He absolves her, but then calls her up to the altar because she hasn't paid her indulgences, where he then indulges in her against her will. We cut over to the Master's class, where we see Mary and Sam sparring before Mary crosses the Master and gets knocked out. We then discover that Mary was just daydreaming about getting her ass kicked by the Master. We here find out that Mary has been institutionalized following her sister's death by overdose the previous month. And after Dr. Jones leaves, because Mary won't talk, we get introduced to Lee, who overhears Dr. Jones talking to someone who wants to buy a drugged up Mary for a good time. Lee warns Mary about the doctor.
I don't know if you can hear me, but you see the good doctor over there? He's a major piece of
before also warning her that this is the sanitarium where the church puts you if they want you to disappear. Cut to later that night where Mary and Lee are in straitjackets with an orderly who paid for them. But before he can get his money's worth, they begin attacking him. Mary slides over to the heating register and grabs her katana. Who had to hide that in their ass to get it in here? And they use it to free themselves from their straitjackets before using it to free the orderly's head from his neck, freeing this dude into the meat bank at deposit number 7. And if you're confused, it's because you didn't watch the short that preceded this, which accounts for deposits 1 through 6. Cut to sometime later where Mary is getting debriefed by Father Crite with her sisters and the Master. Father Crite tells the group that the source of the drugs, the very drugs that killed Mary's sister, have been sourced to one man, Father Fountaine. Mary is prepared to hunt him down, but the Master says that she's not ready.
Let's go get him.
Not ready.
Didn't ask you.
Father Crite goes on to explain that Leo Fountaine hasn't been seen in years, but that an ex-nun, Sister Alice, who left the church 5 years ago, may have some answers, as she may have been the last person to see Fountaine alive. Later, we find out that when Lee and Mary broke out of the sanitarium, Lee disappeared, likely because she knew that the church wouldn't allow them to be together, and that after the events of the short, a secret division of the church brought Mary on to hunt down the corruption within. But now, Father Crite and the Master are having doubts about Mary's ability to do that. Cut to later at the Master's dojo when Mary arrives expecting to spar with Sam, but instead the Master starts whooping her ass. Mary confronts him about fighting fair, and the Master gives her a lesson on how bad guys don't. And just when Mary thinks she has the upper hand, the Master knocks her out. Cut over to this dude who's ripping out pages from the Bible and using them to snort chalk off this stripper's ass. Well, that's not sanitary. You have no idea where that chalk has been. And then discovered that this group is paying respects to the king.
And paying your respects to the predecessor, the one and only king.
A mobster dude who died in the short that I told you to watch, who was deposit number 5 into the meat bank.
I'm paying respects to King.
We find out that Father Fountaine called this meeting but hasn't shown up,
Where the hell is he anyway?
I'm afraid he's indisposed at the moment.
leading that drug-sniffing priest to ask where he is and whether or not they can trust someone that they have never met.
How can we trust someone we've never even met before?
Bite your tongue, brother.
Leading to this nun threatening him for his lack of faith. The host goes on to explain that they need to work on implementing the next phase of the plan, the first one being getting all the neighborhood addicted to chalk, which has produced a steady income for them, but that now is the time for them to expand. But as he is explaining how, this sister, we'll call her Lee, breaks a bottle and slashes his throat, slashing him into the meat bank at deposit number 8. The priest then takes out his gun and starts blasting at the killer nun, accidentally shooting and killing his chalk-holding stripper, shooting her into the meat bank at deposit number 9. Before the nun, we'll call her Lee, runs up and stabs the priest, sending him to hell at deposit number 10. She then slices this dude into the meat bank at deposit number 11, when this dude rushes her and begins choking her, but she breaks his hand and beats him to death with an ashtray, beating him into the meat bank at deposit number 12. Lee then turns her attention to this nun, asking her where Fountaine is before knocking her out when she refuses to answer. Cut over to the Master's dojo where Mary and Sam have exhausted themselves sparring, when the Master tells them to go again.
Again? Seriously? Come on!
You're the one who wants to fight Fountaine already.
Before mocking Mary for believing that she can take on Fountaine.
You want to take on Fountaine? You have no idea what you're doing. You're just like him, weak.
Which pisses Mary off. So she starts swinging at him, first with her fists, but then with her sword. Swinging the Master into the meat bank at deposit number 13. Sam tries to calm Mary down, but she's not having it. So Sam quotes from one of the greatest movies ever made.
Bull. Thou shalt not kill.
Mary, you kick ass for the Lord.
Mary has a crisis of conscience over all the people that she's killed. Except for the Master, because he had that one coming.
He was an abusive piece of shit in power, and the church was covering it up.
Mary leaves the room, and this nun tells Sam that Lee has been spotted, so Sam goes to find her, telling the nun to have Mary meet him there. Meanwhile, Mary meets with Father Crite, who is not surprised that she killed the Master. Father Crite then goes on to deconstruct his faith.
Don't let the frock fool you, girl. I don't give a damn what two consenting adults do.
Then justify all the murdering that Mary has done, telling her that her mission is holy before sending her to go find Lee. Cut over to Sam, who has found Lee, who is also having a crisis of conscience for murdering so many people.
I'm a monster.
When all of a sudden Lee gets shot by that nun, but Mary comes out and cuts off the nun's hand. She then goes over to Lee, and the two of them declare their love for each other, and she tells Sam to take care of Lee.
Take care of her.
As she leaves to finish off that nun she started, and when Sam gets Lee into the car, someone sneaks up and chloroforms him. Meanwhile, in the red hallway that keeps getting redder, Mary is attacked from behind and quickly dispatches this dude into the meat bank at deposit number 14. She then finishes off that nun she started at deposit number 15. Mary then throat rips this dude at deposit number 16, and then heads up these stairs and beats up these dudes, before this guy starts beating her up. Mary then squishes his balls, before stabbing him a bunch with a broken bottle, right into the meat bank at deposit number 17. But while she goes ham on him, this dude, we'll call him Michelangelo, knocks her out with his nunchucks. Cowabunga! So that's why they call them nunchucks. Cut over to Sam, who just woke up to find that Lee is missing, so he goes into the building to find Mary. But while in there, he violently interrogates this dude with a curb stomping this dude into the meat bank at deposit number 18. Which freaks out his friend Vin Diesel, we'll call him Colin, so he tells Sam that he'll show him where they took Mary. Cut over to Mary, who wakes up in this cellar tied to a chair, with a maniacal mad doctor giggling about torturing her, before we find out that the bad guys from World War II are involved.
It's almost playtime.
When we meet Ursula, who is getting turned on just thinking about Mary getting tortured. When all of a sudden, Sister Alice shows up.
Where the f is Fountaine?
I killed him 5 years ago.
Telling Mary that Fountaine is long dead, and now she is Leo Fountaine.
I am Leo Fountaine, Mary.
Leo Fontaining Leo Fountaine into the meat bank at deposit number 19. Sister Alice goes on to explain that she's utilizing her drugs to take out the corruption that's taking over the church.
By peddling chalk?
by shaking the faith in the church.
She goes on to say that Fountaine assaulted her, as did others, and that in spite of her reporting it to the church, they never did anything aside from covering it up. That sounds like the Catholic Church. And it's at this point where Mary realizes that she still believes, and that she'll never side with Sister Alice, who is following her own law rather than God's. So Alice goes over to Ursula and tells her to do her thing. Cut over to Sam and Colin, who have introduced themselves to each other, when Colin warns him about how well guarded the fortress is, and they head into the complex. And when the two of them get cornered by a couple of thugs, Sam shoves his shotgun down Colin's throat and blows him away, blowing him into the meat bank at deposit number 20.
No need to.
He then brawls with these two dudes, sending this dude in at deposit number 21, and knocking this one out, and heading on his way. Cut back over to Mary, who is about to get tortured, when Ursula crushes this dude's spirit.
Fountaine wants her alive.
And Mary goes into her happy place, which is a memory of her and Lee at the park, where Lee gives her the cute eye patch that she's been wearing throughout this movie. Cut back over to the real world, where Mary is having her hand crushed by a World War II bad guy doctor with a hammer, when Mary begins praying, promising God that she'll return to him if he stays with her through this fight.
Heavenly Father, I know I'm not worthy of your protection or your guidance.
Just as the doctor begins removing her fingers. Just then, Sam arrives and knocks down Ursula, and takes on the doctor while Mary frees herself. Mary uses her katana to pin the doctor to the chair, which pins him into the meat bank at deposit number 22, before she uses the chainsaw to chop Ursula into the meat bank at deposit number 23. And when Mary and Sam attempt to leave, Mary discovers Lee nailed to a cross and suspended in the air, beaten and broken but not dead. But it stops Mary dead in her tracks while Sam takes on the thugs entering the room, giving us deposits 24 and 25, before he gets overwhelmed. And I'm not going to lie, they nailed this scene. As Mary essentially activates to save Sam. She then gets us deposits 26 through 28, and Sam hammers in number 29. Sam and Mary then head further into the complex to find Sister Alice / Fountaine, when they get cornered by Fountaine and more of her thugs, leading to deposits 30, 31, and 32. And Alice and Mary get ready for a sword fight. Mary fights a losing battle, having not taken the Master's concerns very seriously prior to killing him, and she retreats outside while Lee, still hanging on the cross, pulls her hands off the nails and falls to the ground. Meanwhile, Mary and Alice continue their katana combat outside, when Alice gets the upper hand, and Alice gives her one last chance to join her or die. But when Mary gives her the wrong answer,
Suck my dick.
Alice prepares to kill her, but Lee shows up in the lee of time and runs her through with Mary's sword, killing Alice, boss fighting Sister Alice into the meat bank at deposit number 33, and Mary and Lee embrace each other. Cut over to Father Crite, who is discussing the fallout of everything with Sam.
I don't have to remind you what kind of mess that Mary and Lee have left us in now.
Who refuses to tell the church where they are, for fear of what the church will do to them.
And wherever they are, they're together. They deserve to be happy.
Cut over to Mary and Lee, who pull up to the sanitarium in which they met.
Yeah, you could say that the doctor has a long overdue appointment with us.
And they off-screen deposit Dr. Jones into the meat bank at deposit number 34. And the movie ends. So now, to find out, what are your chances of suffering survivor's guilt? This is where we take a look at our main characters and the death that surrounds them to determine your odds of surviving this movie. We start off our meat bank deposits with the short, Maniac Nun, including Mary's sister, a dude, a couple of ladies, the king, and the priest at deposits 1 through 6. We then get our orderly at deposit number 7, the host of the King's Wake at deposit number 8, that assumed stripper at deposit number 9, and the priest at deposit number 10. This biker loses his guts at deposit number 11, and this thug comes in at deposit number 12. The Master surprises us at deposit number 13, while a whole host of gangsters, thugs, and nuns come in at deposits 14 through 18. We find out about Fountaine, having been in the meat bank nearly this whole time at deposit number 19, followed by Colin at deposit number 20. This thug blows in at deposit number 21, followed by the surgeon at deposit number 22. Ursula splits in at deposit number 23, followed by a meat bank medley accounting for deposits 24 through 32. Sister Alice Leo Fontaine's her way into the meat bank at deposit number 33, and we wrap up our meat bank deposits with Dr. Jones. Epstein didn't deposit himself at deposit number 34 into the meat bank. Now let's take a look at our survivors. We've got Mary, Lee, Sam, and Father Crite, which means that out of a total of 38 characters, only 4 survive, giving you a 10.5% chance of surviving this movie. Given those odds, when's the last time you chopped the fingers off your abusive master? Let me know in the comments below. And if this is your first time on my channel, go ahead and subscribe so that you don't miss out on any future videos. And special thanks to James Dean for letting me cover your movie. And again, go check out his Indie-gogo campaign for his next project, XXXmas, and pitch in if you can. Also, check out his podcast, The Film Hacks, where James and his fellow filmmaker, Chris Rupert, discuss all things independent filmmaking with their guests. It's a fantastic listen. And a huge thanks to my patrons for all their continued support. Alrighty guys, as always, thanks and don't die.